And after 2 hours of rearming, realigning units from both the bridge, as I told you about earlier, and Snavely's Ford, the 5,800 troops of Burnside's 9th Corps are finally prepared to move out in battle formations toward Sharpsburg. If you look at how I am standing right now, I am facing downtown, center of town, Sharpsburg. Okay. To the left, you're going to see the water tower again. It's Lee's headquarters. So Burnside has his 5,800 troops on line. They're ready to start moving over the route that we just walked. The 3 of his divisions are on this side. The other division of Rodman is to the left, and we'll walk in there in just a minute. Jacob Cox, the Corps commander, was following what he believed to be McClellan's original intent for this part of the battlefield, and he angled all of his formations towards Sharpsburg to the northwest. He was attempting to uncover the middle bridge that we went by a while ago. He was attempting to sweep all the Confederates out of this area so that then the 5th Corps could come over the middle bridge. At least that's what he understood. On the far right was the division of General Wilcox, not to be confused with Cox, the division commander. And he made significant progress. He actually reached the slopes of Cemetery Hill. You see the wall around the cemetery up on that hill?
Yes,
His troops got all the way to that wall, just outside of town. On the left was Fairchild's brigade of Rodman's division, and he pushed the remaining troops of D.R. Jones's division across the rolling hills that we just crossed and south of town, in fact, into the streets of Sharpsburg. It was panic because the Confederate lines seemed to be collapsing, people running everywhere. On the far left, which is where we're about to walk, is where the brigade of Edward Harlan of Rodman's division was stationed, on the far left of the line, and they were not faring nearly as well as the other units in the 9th Corps. Now, interesting story about that monument in front of us. That is a monument to the 11th Ohio. 11th Ohio, as I read things, probably never made it to that position. The 11th Ohio supposedly stopped at one of these fields, potentially this one here, and refused to go any further forward. And that happened in the Civil War quite a bit. Sometimes troops refused to fight, as en masse. That was not actually unusual. So it's interesting how they would place their monument far beyond where they actually made it to. If you look to the right, you can kind of see some buildings through these woods to my immediate right. That is the farmhouse of John Otto, who owned all of this property. In front of you here, these were all plowed fields, all the way down to the bottom of this hill, and then back up to where you see the tour road where people are driving. They were just open, plowed fields here. Where you may be able to make out a pile of rubble near the big tree over there, he actually had a very large barn right there.
that's what I was listening for, his barn, Otto's barn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a place people don't know much about, those ruins, but been over here a couple times, and I'll explain why later. But what I want to tell you is on this little ridge out here behind Otto's barn, and he had an orchard down to the right, this was a burial ground for many of the soldiers that were killed on this part of the battlefield, particularly those killed in 16th Connecticut that we'll talk about in a minute, and some of the 8th Connecticut soldiers were buried in Otto's backyard. Okay. By the way, John Otto was the preacher, senior elder. They didn't really have a preacher. I guess he was the senior elder at the church, the Dunker Church. This is a little bit of trivia.